joining the Making of a Best Lawyer, Best Law Firms, Peer Review Tiers and Awards Explained. If you are new to us, we are Poston Communications, a PR and content agency that focuses on the legal industry. And I'm Georgie Palm, the Director of Content, and my team supports law firms and lawyers across the country with their rankings and submissions. And today we're excited to welcome Elizabeth Petit, the Vice President of Research and Development at Best Lawyers. Elizabeth oversees research and methodology for both Best Lawyers and Best Law Firms, helping ensure the integrity of their rankings. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Okay, great. So we will just go ahead and jump in. So we're going to talk first about understanding the rankings and peer review process. So this is obviously the foundation of best lawyers and best law firms, the peer review process. It's what makes the rankings unique and credible, and it's helpful for firms to understand how the evaluations are conducted. We got a lot of questions about this. So, first and foremost, Elizabeth, can you give us a high-level overview of Best Lawyers?
Yep, absolutely. So, Best Lawyers was founded over 40 years ago by two individuals who were Harvard Law School graduates themselves, who saw an opportunity in the early 80s before the internet and before legal marketing and networking really took off to help lawyers identify other highly talented lawyers to refer their clients when they couldn't take a matter themselves. So they thought about it from the lens of if you needed a lawyer, you are going to ask somebody who knows really truly how good somebody is at practicing law. And that is truly the lawyers themselves. A client's experience with a lawyer is very valuable. It's why most people go into practicing law. But clients are going to think to themselves overall, did they get the outcome that they wanted? Did it cost too much money? Did the lawyer answer their phone calls or emails? A client doesn't actually know how good a lawyer is at practicing law. It is the lawyers themselves who know how good that person across the aisle or across the table is. So Best Lawyers has been exclusively peer review for over 40 years, and that has not changed over time.
Okay, awesome. Well, can you talk to us a little bit more about what makes the purely peer review process unique compared to some of the other legal rankings that are out there in the industry?
Yep. So, our other main competitors will sort of do a variety of different data points to look at evaluating an individual's work. We look at the peer review lens. And all methodologies are valid. They look at different sort of recipes for how to evaluate an individual. This is just our lens. Similar to, it's very common in medical fields, peer review. But we do recognize that because it is exclusively peer review, we want to make sure that there isn't any bias or accidental popularity in this process. So it is both the voter, the person who is giving the evaluations, and the candidate who each have their own scores. So the voter, based on the diversity of feedback they give, their votes are weighted higher or lower. If they say that they absolutely would not recommend any of these lawyers, their weights go down. If they say I absolutely would recommend every single lawyer, their weights go down. If they only cherry pick a couple of friends, their weights go down. So we really do bake in statistical guardrails to make sure that we take out any bias from peer review. And so the longer you've been awarded, if you're a managing partner, practice area head, if you're a lawyer of the year, um, the diversity and amount of times you vote, your scores are weighted higher, so that peer review is as honest feedback as it can be.
Okay, great. How long has this methodology been in place? Has it been in place since you all started, and how would you say it's kind of evolved over time?
So the core concept has not changed. The question that the original founders, Stephen Nafee and Gregory White Smith, asked lawyers was if you could not take this case, how likely would you be to refer your client to this person? What has changed is how it's conducted. So it originally was done over the phone and tallying, And then in 2006, this was all digitized, and through technology, we were able to scale very quickly to ultimately cover 76 markets around the globe. But this core question has not changed.
Okay, that's awesome. And I'm sure that's super helpful for you to make sure everything's digitized. So
Yep. Oh,
that's
yes.
great. I know you mentioned protecting the integrity and fairness of the peer review process. Anything else that you wanted to add there about how you really make sure that's protected?
So most of the evaluations is quantitative. It's on a scale of 1 to 5 with the ability to give additional feedback, say this lawyer doesn't practice in this area, or give qualitative analysis that we do review as guardrails. We do have a team that goes in and spot checks things as well because we want to make sure that, all the data makes sense and that, things are a true reflection of the marketplace.
Okay. Awesome. Great. Well, let's move now to the move from individual lawyers to best law firms.
Mhm.
Obviously, this also combines peer feedback, client input, and other data. So I think what a lot of things that we want to hear about is how does the best law firms research process work, and how does it differ from best lawyers?
Yep. So, best lawyers is the foundation because we know that a firm can't be recognized for firm-wide or practice group excellence without first having individuals practicing at that high level. So, in order for a firm to be eligible, they must have an awarded individual in best lawyers in that practice area and jurisdiction. So if you're looking for a family law in Atlanta firm award, you must have an individual to kick off eligibility. From there, we do a 360 evaluation of firms. So here is where we do ask for clients, professional references, we talk to lawyers, we talk to managing partners, we talk to marketing directors, business development. So we get a picture of everyone's experience with the firm to then award practice groups, national and local, and then the firms overall by area of law.
Okay, excellent. Um, and how does the tiering system work, and what do the different tiers mean for firms?
Mhm. So everything begins at the local level. And so the competition within your market, all of the firms that are eligible for family law in Atlanta are compared and scored, and then they're broken into tiers. With the tier one, tier two, and tier three are the mathematical breaks based on all the feedback and analysis that we receive.
Okay, awesome. We had a few questions about a correction of maybe like a family, if they're not truly family law, or if there's
Yep.
like a custody aspect to it. So why might a correction be deleted instead of just adjusted?
Yep. So this is a good question. It all really depends on what the exact situation is for the ranking. So if the question is, um, our firm, our firm just got a whole lateral group over, and that was not captured in your research. Will you reevaluate? That might be a reason for a correction.
Okay.
If it is, we want you to reevaluate, but our lateral group just actually left. I mean, that might not be a reason for a correction. So it really is all very dependent on what the reason is, and we look at it on a case by case basis. If for some reason the reason your firm was eligible, that partner left, passed away, if the firm isn't taking cases in that area anymore, these are really great questions to ask us specific details on. And then we'll talk about what the options are for your firm.
Okay, awesome. We did get a question from one of the attendees. For firm level rankings, do you require written submissions with casework?
We do not. So that's one differentiator between us and Chambers and Legal 500. We don't have the robust submission packets. We do send firms a firmographic survey, and that's where we really learn more about the firm, about your scope, your client base, really try to understand your piece in the puzzle. And then we do ask for client and professional reference submissions. Those are weighted equally. We opened that up a number of years ago because we know certain practice areas it's really either, not appropriate to give private clients or just, it's really insensitive that you don't want to give private clients in those matters. So we also, and they're evaluated the same way, except professional references as well.
Okay, awesome. And that answers our last question on this slide, so that's great.
Yep.
Um, okay, so let's move on to eligibility and selection.
Mhm.
So, as we kind of talked about, not all lawyers or firms are automatically eligible. Peer feedback, nominations, etc., all matter. So let's explore how this works. What are the criteria for a lawyer? You kind of already talked what the criteria are for a firm to be eligible, but let's talk about lawyers. What's some criteria that you all look for a lawyer to be eligible?
Yep. So we only evaluate lawyers in private practice. We have two awards categories. Our traditional awards are recommended that you wait for someone to be named partner and have been in practice 10 years. And mostly that is to give them time to build up that reputation because, as it is peer review, they're being evaluated by other people who've been in practice for that long and have been promoted to partner. In 2020, we released our Ones to Watch awards, which are designed for like your senior associates, attorneys who've been in practice 5 to 9 years, because we know that you don't just wake up as partner and all of a sudden you're giving excellent legal work and advice. You've been doing excellent practice, building your way up to promotion. So we wanted to recognize attorneys on that path as well.
Okay, awesome. And two questions that play into this that we did get from registrants. One was, can attorneys proactively influence their inclusion? And the second one was, why might attorneys appear in practice areas that they don't actively focus on?
Sure. So nominations are collected. Anyone can submit a nomination, even the lawyer themselves. And nominations are due December 12th. So now is the time to review your nominations reports, make sure everybody at your firm you want to put forward is captured and that they're in the right practice areas. Because we receive nominations from everyone, even though most of them do come from marketing and business development teams, occasionally someone might nominate a lawyer in not the best practice area. So now's the time to review that report and make sure you tell us, hey, this person either maybe used to be doing environmental work, but they're really moving over to another area. Let's move their nomination. Or the client just got a little confused because the client thinks about their personal problem, not practice areas, and nominated them in the wrong area. We do not add points towards nominations. So while we do track for data reasons who the nominator is, we only need you nominated once. So it's not influenced by I need 5 people to nominate me or if a judge nominates me. That is not part of our research methodology.
Okay, awesome. And that kind of goes into our second question on this slide, which then we did get some follow-up questions for that in particular as well. As marketing and business development, professionals, we often need to explain these types of awards and the nomination process to our attorneys. And they often don't have a lot of time and slash
Sure.
or attention span to listen to our explanation. So can you best explain the nomination and voting process and how we would be able to describe that to an attorney?
Yep. So, if I were sitting across from an attorney, I would say, don't worry, I will take care of the nomination process for you. I'm going to put you forth in up to 3 practice areas because we want to put you in front of voters in what you are most known for. And then it is your peers, because we know that lawyers know best who are the best lawyers in the industry, who will vote on you, and that it is an exclusively peer review process. Internally, my recommendation to marketing and business development teams is to pick the practice area that they have the most known reputation in. It is hardest to get in the first time. The barrier for entry is the highest. Then adding additional practice areas is easier. So if a partner is sitting across from you and they say, I do 7 areas of law and I want you to nominate me in 7 areas, it's going to split the vote and it's going to be harder to get them recognized.
Okay, awesome. And we got a question from attendee that also kind of came from a registrant as well. So I'm going to push them together.
Yep.
So, what's an appropriate number of submissions for best lawyers and ones to watch? And as a second question to that, should firms be nominating only lawyers who were not ranked the prior year, or should we be nominating everyone we feel should be ranked?
Okay, great questions. So we automatically renominate you for you anyone who was awarded. So you don't have to worry about those people. What you need to do is look over your report and see anybody who's missing, any name that does not appear there. And then the question that would ask myself is um, internal politics at the firm. There is no cap. You can nominate everyone at the firm if you want. But if there is a junior associate who's out there making a name for themselves, they may get on our list and be awarded before maybe a more senior person who's, head down on their desk, not really networking, hasn't really made that same connection. Because it is, how are you known by the industry? So that is just sort of a calculation for you to take when you submit your nominations. But from our seat, there is no like you can only nominate 20% of your firm and you have to wait for somebody to retire before a new person can get awarded. There's no guardrails there.
Okay, great. Um, so we sort of already answered this, but how do you all ensure that the evaluations are unbiased and representative?
Yep. So we use statistical algorithms, and really the voters' score is what drives, the higher their weights are, determines how valuable their feedback is. And if they have a very low score, then their votes may be kicked out,
Okay.
which is why it's very hard for me to answer the question I always get asked, how many votes does it take to make the list?
Yes.
And it's a question I can't answer because if you are a corporate lawyer in Manhattan, it's going to take a lot more votes from a lot more voters with high scores than it will take if you are a trust and estates lawyer in Lafayette, Louisiana, where my family grew up, because it's just a smaller pool, a smaller competition.
Okay. And we got a question from an attendee about the voting process. So, for the peer review process, do all people that were submitted in every firm's nominations report receive an email or a ballot to vote on all the other names that were submitted? In essence, who gets to vote and who determines who will be listed in the list of names that are going to be voted on?
Yep, great question. So, Best Lawyers, the traditional awards, is closed voting. Only the individuals who were awarded last year are invited to vote because the industry has said these people are the best of the best and they get to select next year's class. Everyone is evaluated every single year. So there is incentive to continue voting. You don't just stay on the list once you make it. You are reevaluated every single year. A individual voter can vote on lawyers inside the firm in their own practice area. Those votes are weighted lower, not because they necessarily have a lower voting score, but just because overall everyone says people inside their own firm are great. But it can be something that helps a threshold. So if a candidate is borderline, if we have some internal voting that says, yep, we all agree this person is performing excellent in practice, it can push them over the edge.
Okay. And then what percentage of lawyers and firms are recognized each year?
So individually, we recognize about 5% of lawyers in the US. That is not a hard number. It's not, again, like you need some people to retire and move on in order to award new people, but it's where the industry sort of, just naturally falls.
Okay.
We also recognize that in order For some people to be the best, not everyone can be the best. So it is difficult to make the list. Only 2% of first-time nominees make it their first year, because we really do want this to be a true reflection of the top of the market.
Okay, awesome. And we did just get another question from an attendee that they're still a little confused about who the peers are that are voting. So can you talk about how you determine who votes for certain lawyers, whether it's
Yep.
like practice area, regional, etc.?
Yes, exactly. So, um, if you are, if you were named last year in Best Lawyers for corporate law in Los Angeles, you get to vote on the nominees for corporate law in Los Angeles this year. It's all based on your area of practice and where you work because we want to put the people who you are most likely to know in front of you. And so it's based on your practice areas and jurisdiction. And again, you had to have already been named into Best Lawyers to be invited.
Okay, got it. Great. Um, We already covered that. Okay, so let's move on to trends and insights. So we know that Best Lawyers obviously gets some really great data and tracks trends over time, providing insight into market shifts, new practice areas, etc. So just curious, what emerging trends are you all seeing in the legal market today?
Absolutely. So obviously the same thing that everybody is seeing, the introduction of AI has changed how we're all doing our jobs, but it's also changed how law firms are offering legal services, and it's a new practice area that we have started awarding. We will add additional practice areas as they become appropriate. We added cannabis law, fintech. So as the industry expands, we will add new practice areas over time. Certainly, with every changeover in administration, we see that there's a big shift between lawyers moving from government work back to private practice. There's been a lot of regulatory work going on recently. So, all sort of the typical environmental factors you see as well.
Okay, awesome. Um, And then, sort of some industry insights from you all. Which practice areas or regions have seen the most change recently?
Yep. So a lot of change in DC, a lot of change in Texas. Again, a lot of this is driven by changes from business and corporate, moving where they're doing business, types of law, a lot of ripple effects. I don't know if y'all are familiar with the Trump bump, but a lot of litigation coming out through that as well. So that's sort of where we've seen a lot of change coming. Also, I can't open my email on a given day without another firm merger announced. So we're seeing a lot of changes coming from consolidation of firms as well.
Okay, awesome. And how has feedback from peers and clients shaped the rankings over time?
Yep. So client and peer, so client feedback is the most highly weighted feedback for the best law firms rankings. And the big change that we did add a few years ago was expanding the definition of a client again to capture not just, personal clients, but also business clients and professional references. So that married with the peer evaluation of their competitor firms, we see every single year increased participation year over year. This year we had 40,000 lawyers vote for best lawyers. I am not a Yankees fan personally. If you are, go you, but that's enough people to fill Yankee Stadium. And so we were really excited to see that the industry continues to really be bought into the research process.
Okay, awesome. And then, kind of industry insights, but also insights about best lawyers and best law firms. What do you think some of the most common misconceptions are about this ranking process?
I think the biggest misconception about best lawyers is because it's peer review, there's a misconception that it can be a popularity contest, but we have all these guardrails in place to ensure that that isn't true. And when we get whiffs of that, we go investigate to make sure that it is as unbiased as possible and is a true reflection of the marketplace. And so, what I would say also, another misconception is that firms can't ask questions or can't poke and say, hey, one of our deal makers wasn't awarded this year. Tell us why. We will tell you exactly where the hangup is, what happened, and what your options are. Maybe they were nominated in too many practice areas and the votes got split. Maybe the feedback was that they're really strong, but they're sort of a more junior partner, and the voting pool says they need a few more years. So we are not a black box, and we will answer those questions directly. So just reach out and we'll have a conversation.
That's awesome. That's great. Um, Okay, so let's move on to practical advice and forward thinking. Um, Obviously, the recognition is invaluable, but obviously, firms need to make a strategy around it to leverage it effectively. So, just wanted to talk to you about some practical advice for lawyers and marketing folks to really um, understand the rankings. And we are getting some questions that I'm going to hold until the end because there's just a few additional questions. So I just want to say that to everyone that's asking questions. Keep them coming. We're going to have time to answer questions at the end. But Elizabeth, what should lawyers and firms understand about their recognition or tier placement?
Yep. So we know that clients looking for legal services do not go to one place to select a lawyer or firm for their needs. They're going to cross-reference a few places. Where we do find that rankings can play a role is helping you in a very competitive market stand out and say that, if you're trying to win that case, win that client, it's a competitive edge. It is free to be researched and ranked and awarded. We encourage you to promote it on your website and your social media assets. And so, like, let it work for you. If you are pitching a client that's a healthcare client, let them know that you're ranked in best law firms for healthcare law. There is no cost owed back to us to say that you received this third party verification and validation by the industry. And I think that's something that really helps us stand apart. We are not an editorial board. We are industry driven. And so it is your own peers in your own industry. We're just putting all the pieces together and packaging it up for you.
Okay, that's awesome. What are some common mistakes that you see firms make during the process, whether that's just the voting process itself or putting people forward? I know there's some mistakes that can be made when they're also marketing that. Like I know you guys have a very strict um, sort of editorial guide that you want, folks to follow when they're promoting it. So talk to us a little bit about all those different maybe mistakes that some of the firms make.
Best practices, I would say help us help you. So, we are throughout the year maintaining our data and trying to update in real time news alerts and changes. You can send us your press releases, so you're not waiting until the end of the year when you have chamber submissions and Legal 500 submissions and it's the holiday party and you've got too much to do. So help us help you with keeping your laterals changes and partner changes update throughout the year. We do send out regular communications asking you to review the names that have been put forward, and it is the best time to just, take a second and say, yep, these are the right people, or no, Susie's in the wrong practice area. It's a super easy fix at the start of the process. It's a lot harder come summertime when you find out that Susie didn't make the list because she was in the wrong practice area. That we then have to say, oh, now we have to go back to the voters and say, yes, she doesn't do this type of law. Let's go to a different voting pool and try to get more analysis.
Okay, awesome. Um, how can firms prepare for future eligibility or to perhaps improve their rankings, whether that's moving up in tiers or that's getting additional attorneys ranked?
Mhm. So you know your firm's best, you know your succession plans. So you also, even if you've got some rainmakers who you know maybe are heading more towards retirement, go ahead and get those nominations in. Even if you know the lawyers may not make it for a few years because they haven't quite built up that reputation in the industry, at least you've done your step and we're starting to collect data because the data is cumulative, so we have maybe a few years, and then maybe by the time that rainmaker or partner does retire or move on, you've already got your next class ready to keep those awards and recognitions going.
Okay.
If you're looking for like real life tips on improving your rankings, that's something that we can look at on a case by case basis and sort of show like where the competition is and what some best practices are as research starts in January for best law firms.
Okay. Awesome. And this was a question from an attendee since we were talking about that. Who
Yep.
is the appropriate contact person for firms or individuals to ask about why they weren't ranked or how to improve their rankings?
Yep. So for best law firms, I will usually filter you to the best law firms research team. Valerie Smith is the research manager. Of course, anytime you reach out to me, I will do my best to help you. I may put you towards Valerie for best law firms, and then Kimberly Welsh is our best lawyers research manager. Put you towards her for best lawyers questions as well.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to include that information for everyone in our follow-up email so you guys have it at your fingertips. Okay, so let's just move quickly to forward thinking. So as we've obviously discussed, the legal market is evolving and, rankings need to obviously evolve with it. So how do you see best lawyers and best law firms evolving in the next couple of years?
So best lawyers, what we continue to do is make sure that the people awarded are truly still practicing and are taking clients and are really at the top of their, careers, adding additional practice areas as appropriate. Sometimes we hear somebody champion, I do this niche area of law and please, please, please add my practice area, but we do have to have enough people doing that type of law to warrant adding a practice area. For best law firms, something we have talked about is possibly expanding to do industry team awards as
Mm.
well, outside of just practice area awards, because we know that lawyers and law firms organize based on areas of law, but clients think about how do I hire a firm based on the industry of a client. So that's sort of something that we're noodling on.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, before I ask my final question, there are a few outstanding questions from attendees, and if you all have questions, please put them in the Q&A and we'll get them answered with Elizabeth here for you while we have a few minutes left. So a question that we got a few times is for jurisdiction, for the ranking. Is that only city level, but also the statewide level? Is it both?
So it sort of depends on where you're located. So it could be hyper located to your city if you're in a very dense population. So like Manhattan, you're going to be in Manhattan. But if you are in a city in a more rural location, then it could get expanded just so we have enough people for you to give evaluation or enough firms.
Okay.
So it's all to create enough competition.
Okay, so it applies both for your ranking, but also for who you're voting for as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Next question. Nomination report is due on December 12th. Is that also when the client references are due?
Nope, client references aren't due until end of March. They don't open until next year. So go on your holiday break and don't worry about that.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you. Okay. It says, I'm still a bit unclear on how attorneys who've been listed for several years suddenly drop off the list, especially if they're senior partners. Does this simply mean they need to be renominated?
So they shouldn't need to be renominated. If they were awarded for several years and they no longer are awarded, it means that we didn't have enough feedback to award them that year. But that's a great question to contact us directly and we'll give you some insight into what we see. and help you strategize what the next steps are. Sometimes, depending on the practice area, it may be a practice area where we just don't get a lot of voter feedback. And this is something that we could really go back to the voters and say, this person is really widely known. It's not bad feedback. Let's just try to get more feedback and get them re-awarded. Um, anything that's government regulation, white collar, so some of these practice areas, we just don't get a ton of feedback in. And so that's where having a conversation with us could maybe give you some options, but you have to initiate that so we know who to go look at.
Amazing. Um, and then I think you may have responded to this, but let's maybe just reiterate it a little bit more. Who is that? Who is it that is voting on the rankings if we do not provide clients or client references?
Okay, so if you don't provide client references, then the data that we use are what the lawyers had to say about your firm, which includes all the voters and best lawyers. We also do leadership interviews with managing partners and practice area heads. Clients also have the opportunity to self-add if they have worked with your firm. So if it's a client that you didn't submit, but they have an experience with your firm, we might get some feedback that way.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's it. Unless anyone else wants to submit a question, please do so now. But Elizabeth, what is the single most important takeaway for firms and for marketing and business development folks about the rankings process that you think they should take back from this webinar today to their desks or to their teams?
Uh, Pick up the phone or send an email. If it doesn't make sense, if you're scratching your head, if you're like, why isn't this person awarded? Why are we a tier two? Let's have a conversation because, again, we're not an ivory tower. We're not a black box. We will tell you exactly what's going on. We want to be partners with firms and we want to help you because we know you're busy. We appreciate all of your engagement and time with us.
Amazing. Well, we did get two more questions as you were saying that. So, since we have some extra time, one question, did you say if lawyer votes count more than client votes?
So client votes for best law firms count the most.
Okay, excellent. And then also, I think you did maybe answer this at the beginning, but sounds like we should reiterate it a little bit. Are in-house lawyers voted on slash selected as best lawyers, or are they only law firm lawyers that are considered private?
Um, okay, so we only award attorneys in private practice that are actively taking new cases.
Okay.
So you also could have a senior attorney who maybe's been awarded for a very long time, but the industry has said they're not taking new cases, they're actually retired, and that may be why they're no longer awarded.
Okay, so any of the like general counsel roles at
Yeah.
like big corporations, those are not considered. Okay.
Nope, we do track that though, and so they may like go to a GC role and then come back to private practice, and then they can pick right back up where they left off. We see a lot of that movement happening.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you all for attending today. If you have any questions, please, you're welcome to email me. And like I said, we're going to include the best lawyers follow-up information that Elizabeth provided today in our webinar replay, which you all should receive by the end of this week. And really just wanted to thank everyone who joined all of our webinars this year. Your engagement has made our, inaugural season of this truly meaningful. And this is our last session for 2025. So please stay tuned for our 2026 Poston Playbook webinar schedule. We do know that the first one will be happening in February, but more details to come on that. So thank you all again. And like I said, the recording of today's session will be sent out by the end of the week. So appreciate you all. Elizabeth, thank you again and have a happy new year.
Thank you all.
Bye.